They say trust your gut. Mine screamed as I lifted the spoon. But I ignored it because poisoning your own sister is something you read about in Gothic novels, not something that happens at a 3-Michelin-star restaurant on a Tuesday night. I was wrong. The sound of crystal glasses clinking in toast had just begun to fade when a sound like a broken steam valve wheezed from my throat. I am Marlo Vale, a forensic archivist. My world is one of silent libraries and the delicate dust of centuries, not lavish corporate parties like this one. I was a ghost at this feast of tailored suits and calculated charm. My brother, Alistair, stood at the front of the private dining room, his grin a slash of white in the amber gloom. He leaned into the microphone, his voice dripping with that performative exasperation he'd perfected. "And here we go," he announced, a stage whisper that carried. "Marlo? Don't start. It's truffle soup. There's no shellfish. Or do you fancy ruining my big night?" A ripple of tense laughter moved through the crowd. He was playing to his audience, scoring points with his biting humor, basking in their validation. He didn't notice the man sitting directly across from me. Silas Thorne, CEO of the conglomerate that had just promoted Alistair to head of global communications, wasn't laughing. He was staring at my bowl with a look of dawning horror. Because Silas Thorne's son carries the same lethal allergy I do. He knows anaphylaxis. He knows the sound of an airway closing like a vault. Before my vision could even start to tunnel, Silas was moving. He was on his feet, pulling an EpiPen from the breast pocket of his bespoke suit and closing the distance between us with a speed that defied his 60 years. But let me rewind. To understand the trap, you need the setup. The celebration was held in the Vault, the exclusive top-floor room of Leclet, a restaurant where the waitlist was a form of social currency. The air tasted of old money and desperate ambition. At 27, I've carved a niche restoring historical documents for museums and private collectors. Colleagues call me the time surgeon for my cold precision and deep knowledge of material decay. My hands mend things that have survived plagues and wars. I work in silence, with respect for fragile, beautiful truths. Alistair, at 30, was the opposite. A nova of charisma, he just landed the crown jewel of his career. Our parents, Roland and Imogen Vale, sat beaming, their pride a tangible thing. They adore Alistair's glossy, powerful world. My work, to them, is a quaint, slightly morbid hobby, the disappointing daughter who chose parchment over power. The poison was sown hours before the soup arrived. When Silas entered the lobby, Alistair had swooped in, ready to schmooze. Instead, Silas's eyes passed over him and landed on me. He spent 20 engrossing minutes discussing the enzymatic breakdown of 17th-century ink with me, asking about iron gall corrosion and preservation substrates. He mentioned a cache of colonial-era trade ledgers his foundation had acquired and wondered if I'd consult. I watched Alistair's smile tighten to a rictus. I saw the fury burning behind his eyes. This was his spotlight, and I, the quiet sister in the corner, had stolen its heat. His jealousy wasn't just envy. It was a combustible compound of ego and spite. He wanted to humiliate me, to prove I was fragile, a faker. He believed a trace of shellfish would merely be an inconvenience, a few hives, some uncomfortable itching. A lesson. A way to put me back in my shadowy place. I didn't see the act, but I later reconstructed it from the aftermath. Alistair had vanished before the meal. He found Chef Reynard, a culinary artist known for his daring infusions. "Chef," Alistair had said, turning on the megawatt charm. "I've heard whispers about your secret weapon, that lobster essence you reserve for the signature bisque." Chef Reynard, flattered, nodded. It was his masterpiece, a distillation of rock lobster roe and shells, simmered into an amber elixir. For my celebration, Alistair continued, I'd love a truly unique experience. Could you add just a drop of that essence to the truffle veloute? I imagine the umami would be transcendent. A bold pairing. Chef Reynard was intrigued. It was unorthodox, but the request came from the guest of honor. For such a patron, he would craft a singular amuse-bouche. For you, Mr. Vale, I will prepare one special bowl. The chef couldn't have known he was being weaponized. He had no idea the request was a targeted strike. When the soup was served, it was a work of art. My bowl shimmered with a delicate, coppery oil slick. Alistair leaned in, his voice a conspiratorial murmur. I had chef add a dash of smoked paprika oil and porcini dust to yours, Loie. I know rich food sometimes unsettles you. This should be gentler. I am, by nature and profession, suspicious. When you handle texts that are older than nations, you learn to verify everything. But that night, I was disarmed by the setting, by the apparent olive branch. The overwhelming scent of earth and truffle was a perfect olfactory mask. I suspected nothing. The first spoonful was sublime. For 3 seconds. Then, the vice tightened. My throat constricted. A fire spread across my lips and tongue, swelling them. Angry welts bloomed up my neck. I tried to stand, but the room tilted. I crashed to the floor, a marionette with cut strings, clawing at my neck, making those awful, inhuman gasps. And through the roaring in my ears, I heard Alistair's laugh. A clear, triumphant sound. See, he proclaimed, voice soaring above the murmurs. Mushrooms. And she's pulling the shellfish allergy card. The drama never ends with Marlowe. Uncertain laughter flickered. Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Come on, Loie, Alistair chided, stepping closer to my writhing form on the Persian rug. Stand up. You've got the floor. Isn't this what you wanted? To make my night about you. I tried to lock eyes with him, to scream I am dying with my gaze, but the black spots were multiplying. This was it. My epitaph. She died at a party while her brother did stand-up. Then Silas Thorne was there. He didn't ask. He didn't hesitate. He dropped to his knees, ripped the cap off the EpiPen, and drove it into my thigh. The adrenaline hit my system like a lightning bolt, a shocking, cold rush that pried the fist from my windpipe just enough for a thin, whistling breath. Ambulance. Now, he roared, his voice a command that shattered the room's paralysis. And someone fetch oxygen. Chaos erupted. The manager fumbled with a phone. A server sprinted for a first aid kit. Silas kept his eyes on mine. Stay with me. You're fighting. Keep fighting. It was then I saw Alistair's face change. The smug victory melted into confusion, then dawning, horrified comprehension. This wasn't going to plan. It was just a joke, he stammered, retreating a step. My mother rushed over. What's happening? What's wrong with her? Anaphylactic shock, Silas spit out, not looking away from me. From deliberate shellfish contamination. This is not a performance. My father looked from my distorted face to Alistair's pale one. Alistair, what did you do? Nothing. It's a mistake. The kitchen must have. Before he could finish, our server, a young man named Leo, appeared. Mr. Vale, shall I clear the soup course now? Not now. Alistair snapped. In that moment, the epinephrine granted me a crystal-clear fury. With a strength I didn't know I had, I grabbed Silas's wrist. I pointed a trembling finger at the bowl that had nearly been my coffin. Then I made a fist, a conservator's sign. Preserve this. He understood instantly. No one touches this table. His voice was absolute, imperial. Security. This is a crime scene. Nothing leaves. Nothing is moved. Alistair forced a laugh. Silas, please, this is absurd. Everything stays, Silas ice-cut through his protest. Every spoon, every napkin. Until the authorities arrive. My mother clutched Alistair's arm. Tell me this was an accident. Tell me. Alistair opened his mouth, but no sound emerged. His mask had finally, fully slipped. As the paramedics worked on me, loading me onto a stretcher, Silas turned his wrath on my brother. You said it was truffle. You watched her airways close and called it acting. She overreacts to everything. It's probably a panic attack. Panic attacks don't require epinephrine to reverse cardiac arrest, Silas stated flatly. Stop lying. Then, Chef Reynard burst in, distraught. Mr. Vale. Leo told me about the allergy. But you requested the lobster essence yourself. You said it would be a novel experience. The silence was a physical weight. Leo, emboldened, added softly, and you specifically indicated I should serve that bowl to Miss Vale. You pointed to her seat. The truth hung in the air, naked and ugly. My father's voice was hollow. Alistair. Explain. Alistair unraveled. I just thought, she's so dramatic about it. I thought a tiny bit would prove she was faking. Just a rash, maybe? I never meant for this. You never meant to almost kill your sister? Silas's question was a scalpel. Is that your defense? It was my night. Alistair shrieked, the polished facade gone. And she was stealing it like she always does. Sitting there with her quiet, superior act, drawing your attention. I just wanted her to stop. Be quiet, my father said, the words heavy with a finality I'd never heard him use on his golden son. The paramedics began wheeling me out. As I passed my family, I met each of their eyes. My mother, mascara bleeding. My father, shell-shocked. Alistair, pure terror. The ambulance doors closed on their crumbling world. The siren wailed, a soundtrack to my rebirth. In that sterile, racing vehicle, a coldness settled in my core. This wasn't a sibling rivalry gone too far. This was a predator who'd seen my life as an acceptable cost for his ego. And my parents were his willing audience. My silence in the following days wasn't forgiveness. It was strategy. I needed time. Time to let them believe the old Marlowe, the one who smoothed things over, was still in charge. Time to build a case that would leave no room for their excuses. From my hospital bed, I summoned my attorney, Ms. Vance, a woman whose reputation was built on dismantling powerful men. I gave her every detail. I want him dismantled, I whispered, my voice raw from intubation. Financially, professionally, reputationally. I want it clean, legal, and total. How much? She asked. 1.2 million, I said. A number calculated to be ruinous, yet just shy of impossible. And we mediate in 3 weeks. Quickly, before they can spin a narrative. When my family finally reached out with flowers, voicemails about family healing, a text from Alistair reading asterisk, can we talk? This is all a huge misunderstanding asterisk. I didn't respond. My quiet was the calm before the surgical strike. The mediation room was a tomb of beige. Alistair arrived late, performing contrition in cashmere. My parents flanked him, my mother's eyes pleading, my father's jaw set for negotiation. Alistair's performance began instantly, tears welling on cue. Marlowe, I'm so sorry. I swear I thought it would just be a minor reaction. A prank. You know how you can be about your allergy. Stop, I rasped, the word sandpaper rough. My mother jumped in. Sweetheart, he made a terrible error in judgment. He's devastated. Can't we just put this behind us? For the family? I looked at them, the performer, the enabler, the patriarch, and felt the last fragile tie sever. No, I said, my voice gaining strength from the certainty. I don't want a family that needs putting this behind us. I will not let it go. Ms. Vance opened her dossier. What followed was a clinical evisceration. The chef's affidavit detailing the specific request. The server's statement about the deliberate placement. Text records showing Alistair's searches for allergy thresholds days prior. Medical reports outlining the permanent damage to my vocal cords and the psychological trauma. This is premeditated aggravated assault, Ms. Vance stated. The district attorney is looking at 8 to 12 years. Alternatively, my client will accept a civil settlement, $1.2 million, comprehensive release, and an NDA. The blood drained from their faces. That's robbery. Alistair spat. It's cheaper than a felony conviction and bankruptcy from the civil suit that would follow, Ms. Vance replied coolly. Your apartment, your investments, your parents' equity. It's all quantifiable. Or you can take your chances with a jury who will see a man who poisoned his sister for a promotion. The negotiation was brutal, ugly. My father tried to bargain. My mother wept. Alistair cycled between rage and begging. But the math was inescapable. They signed. I watched Alistair's hand shake as he committed his financial oblivion to paper, watched my parents mortgage their future to save their son from prison. As I stood to leave, Alistair looked at me, truly looked, and saw a stranger. I'm your brother, he choked out. No, I corrected softly, gathering my coat. You are the toxin in my life. I'm simply removing you. The fallout was swift and absolute. Alistair was quietly dismissed from Thorn Global. The Whisper Network did the rest. No PR firm would touch him. He sold everything at a loss. My parents drained their retirement, took liens on their home. The payments arrived in my account like clockwork. A year later, I stood in the heart of Vale Archives and Conservation. The settlement had been the seed capital. The Thorn Foundation's contract secured by Silas, who'd said, "You know how to separate the precious from the poisonous," had been the sunlight. The space was a converted light industrial loft, all high windows and clean lines, smelling of agar gel and old paper. My team worked quietly in the background. We were restoring a collection of Renaissance guild ledgers, painstakingly neutralizing the acid that was slowly eating them from within. My phone buzzed. A message from Ms. Vance. Final transfer confirmed. Matter closed. I felt nothing but a profound, quiet peace. I'd learned that some histories are too toxic to preserve. Some records must be sealed away, not out of reverence, but for safety. My family's narrative was one of them. I heard through the grapevine that Alastair was managing a chain copy shop in a strip mall. My parents lived in their hollowed-out house, nursing their resentment. They were ghosts to me now, footnotes in my story. I turned back to my work table, to a water-damaged 15th-century missal. The vellum was warped, the ink blurred, but beneath the damage was something worth saving. I donned my gloves, selected a microspatula, and began the careful work of separation and salvage. Outside, the late afternoon sun gilded the dust in the air. My life was my own creation now, built not on family legacy, but on the ruins of the brother who tried to erase me. I had taken the poison meant to diminish me and metabolized it into strength. I had preserved the one thing that truly mattered, myself. And in the deep, respectful silence of my archive, surrounded by the fragile, enduring beauty of rescued histories, I was finally, completely whole.